Hey everyone, so in this video, what we're going to discuss about is an analytics application as shown by this diagram over here. So let me get into this diagram and define each of these moving parts associated with it and how they are interacting with each other to get a better understanding. So let me start from the left-hand side over here. So here we have our user. The user will interact with our Discord bot application through slash commands. So these words slash commands is specifically a terminology being used within the Discord application. So as the name suggests, it's a command. So it's designed to do a specific thing that we define. So coming over here, what we have here is the Discord bot, which is a certain application offered within the Discord application. So if this is the first time that you're hearing about Discord, so it's an application, it's just a chat application, just like WhatsApp or Telegram that you can use for chatting purposes. But here there are more features offered to the users and also the developers. So there's much more flexibility other than WhatsApp and Telegram. So that's the reason why I'm going with Discord bots for our front end. So once a slash command is received by the bot, it will send a request towards our backend API. So that's what this webhook means. So once a slash command is received, it will send a request to our backend API. In this particular project, we are hosting our backend API through Azure Functions. So Azure Functions is more or less a listener for the specific events that we have or sent through the Discord bot. And depending on what slash commands we use, we can define specific data processing conditions within the Azure functions. So for the data, we are using Google Sheets. Specifically, we are retrieving the Google Sheet data within the Azure function. And depending on what slash command we have used or the user has given as the input, we will do some process, and in turn, we will send a response to the Discord bot, which then the bot will give the user the final results that they expect. So that's how the interaction happens. For this project to follow along, you need to have some basic understanding of Python functions and the basic like the usage of the language. For development purposes, I'm using the VS Code IDE. I would highly encourage you to use VS Code if you're using another IDE such as PyCharm or something else, because since we are using Azure Functions, there is much more flexibility or rather support for the VS Code application. So I encourage you to use VS Code for this project. That being said, let's look at how we can define our data to get everything started. So let me get into that. So for this demonstration, I'm using this simple data frame where we have, just 3 columns and some random numbers for them. So you can actually substitute any Google Sheets data that you currently have instead of this one. So it doesn't really matter. But what you have to keep in mind is to make sure that you change your access level to anyone with the link in your particular Google Sheet that you're using. If you want to keep it as restricted, you can do that as well, but then you'll have to deal with additional authorization steps. But I don't want to deal with those additional authorization levels at this point, so I'm going to go ahead with anyone with the link. So that's pretty much it for the data. The next step will be heading over to the Google Cloud Console. So yeah, you can go to this particular link and try to log into your Google Cloud Console using your personal email or whatever the email that is. And here, if you just click again over here, you can see already something over here is selected, right? So this is actually the project that we will be working on. So if you click on that again and then click on new project, you can basically create a project. So you can give whatever the project name, and if there is an organization, then just put that up. But if it is a personal use case, you potentially might not have. But yeah, if you do, then you can go ahead and do that. So if you just click on create, that type of a project will be created. So once you have created a project, there are different things that we can do. But specifically, the reason why we are creating this project in Google Cloud is to access the Google Sheets API. So the only way to do that is through this Google Cloud. So what I'm going to do next is, so I'm going to make sure that my project is selected by this tick over here. So if I go to the API and services, you will see this type of a layout. So here, for your project, by default, there will be a bunch of APIs enabled. But this actually doesn't have the Google Sheets API by default. So in those cases, what you need to do is, once you have created the project and you got this, like you got up to here, you have to just go to enable APIs. And here you can see the different APIs that you can activate. So what we are interested about is the Google Sheets API. So what you need to do is just click on that and you will get to this page. So here, when you are enabling it for the first time, you will see enable, like a blue button which says enable, right? So you can click on that and enable this API for this particular project. So mine is already enabled. That's why it's showing this green tick. Yeah. So if you go back to the earlier place now, earlier you might not see, like when you first create the project, you might not see it here. But after enabling it, you will see it here. So if you just click on that, you will get different links to the startup, like basically to get started with Google Sheets API. So you can access the Google Sheets API through either the software development kit or the SDK or the REST API. So in this project, what I'm going to deal with is the REST API of Google Sheets. Because I had trouble of dealing with the SDK, like using the SDK for this Google Sheets API. So I'm going to go ahead with the REST API. Yeah, so if you are interested, you can go head over to these links and dive into the documentation. But I'm not going to do that at this point. So I'm just going to head over back over here. So once you have enabled this Google Sheets API, what you need to do is head over to this credentials tab. So here you will see you have three sections: API keys, out to client IDs, and service accounts. So you might not see anything in these sections when you first create a project. So that's perfectly fine. What we need to actually do is all right, so the next step is actually to create the API key. So I have already generated one API key, but I'll show how to do it if you're gonna create an API key. So we'll click on this create credentials option. And here we have three types of credentials that we can create. Yeah, as I mentioned, what we are interested in is the API key. So this basically does the process of creating an API key. Let's just wait for yeah. All right, so there you go. We have our API key. So you can copy at this point, or even later on, you can copy it. So that's fine. So when you create this API key for the first time, there will be a warning shown here because it's created as an unrestricted API, rather API key. So what you need to do is, to make it more secure, you can head over to this API restrictions part and click on restrict key. And here you will see all the APIs that were enabled by default when you created the project. So what we want to do is enable this API key only for the Google Sheets API, so that we know that using this API key, anyone can't access other APIs. So once that's done, you can just click on save. And right, yeah. So yeah, you can see the green tick over here. So that warning is gone. So yeah, that's how you create an API key. Let me just delete that because I already have one. Uh, all right. Okay, that is done. Um, so then now, if you reflect on what we have done so far, we created the Google Sheets, we enabled the APIs, we created an API key and created a new project. So let me go head over to the next step, which is to the Azure portal. So this is where in our original image, the early image that I showed, so we tackled this part, and now we're going over to this one. So let me list down the steps that you need to do over here. So this is basically our Azure portal. So you can see, like, you can create, like, basically log into the Azure portal using a Microsoft account. So if you don't have one, you'll need to create a Microsoft account, then log into this. So this is how you will see it when you kind of log for the first time. Like, this is the home page. So what you need to do is actually create a subscription. So if you click on this one, the subscription, you can see all the current subscriptions that are shown to you. So by default, there will be one subscription created for you. So you can actually use that if you want. That's perfectly fine. But if you are, trying testing things out and you want to create another API, another subscription, you can go ahead and do that by clicking on this add icon. So you can give the subscription name. These will be populated by default. So I'm not going to touch that. And yeah, if you go over here, you can set a budget, like the amount that you are willing to go on maximum, and set a, like, basically alert conditions will be sent. So you can just, put something like $1 and put a name for the budget. So it can be something like Discord bot or something that makes sense for you. There are tags that you can add, and then once all that is done, you can click on the create. So here I can't do that because I didn't enter the name here. So, but yeah, that's how you create a subscription. So once a subscription is actually created, what you need to do next, again, if you go to the home page, you can see this functions app. So that's what that's the Azure function that we want to create. So let's click on that. And here you can see all the Azure functions that are created. So since if you are starting things out there, this will be empty. But yeah, you can just click on create. All right. And here you can see different hosting plans. So it actually depends on your use case, like what type of traffic you will be experiencing through this API. So based on that sort of an information, you can select whatever the plan that is suitable for you. But for this project, since we want to, keep things as free as possible, I'm going to go with the consumption plan. Yep. So yeah, right. Let's select that. And here, you will like see this basic section over here. So here we can select the subscription. So that's why I told earlier we need to first create a subscription. So you need to select that particular subscription here. And if you have already created a resource group, you will need to do that as well. So I already did that. And let me maybe show that first, because that is actually essential. So let me head over to the home and let's go to the resource groups. So here, this is resource group. So basically, based on your subscription that you select, so which is in my case this one, you can give a name to the resource group, right? So yeah, as it describes, is a collection of resources that share the same lifecycle, permissions, and policies. Yeah. So you can use this particular resource group across multiple services offered by Azure. So something like Functions app and the container registry or anything like that can use the same resource. So from where you are, you can select on the region that is closest to you. So mine would be Central India at this point. So I can select that. And if I go here, so yeah, based on your region and all of that, these what you call the fields will be populated with the values that you have created. So again, here also you can add tags. But yeah, that's pretty much how you would create a resource group. So once that is done, I'm again going to head over to the home page and to the Functions app to resume what I was explaining earlier. So yeah, we know this one. And here you can then, once you have created your resource group, you can select it over there. So the reason why we want to create a resource group is because there is a star, which is a mandatory field. So here you can define the function name. So you can give something meaningful here depending on your application. And then you can select the runtime. So for this one, I'm using Python. But if you're using some other language, you can do that. But if you're following this tutorial, you'll have to work with Python. You can select the relevant version. I would select 3.10. And here again, you can select the region that is closest to you and select the, all right, so we can't actually select the Windows option here, but yeah, Linux will just work fine. And if you just go to the next one, here you will get so storage account by default, because some files need to be uploaded to the cloud. So that's why this is created. And let's just go over here. Like you can basically leave these default values as is and get things done. So that's fine. Let me just wait until this loads. All right, so what this means is whether you want to enable application insight. So it will, yeah, as it says over here, give certain monitoring metrics, and that is actually priced. So if you don't want to be priced, you can just disable it for your use case. But if you kind of feel like that is valid, like this feature will be essential for your application, then you can enable it. All right, let's just go over here. Yeah, if you did everything fine up until now, we'll get to this particular page. Let's give it a minute to maybe load. All right, well, delete that. Maybe a function name, text function or something. Right, you can't give underscores. Right, so that's not available. Maybe let's add some random numbers. All right, it's not available. That means maybe say this code. All right, so that's available. Basically, this will actually decide your URL name that you will get in your API, like basically the API URL. So you might want to give something meaningful to make things nice. Right, let me just go over here. All right, so here you can see all the like a summary of all the attributes that you have defined so far. You can see the like the region, the SKU, and all of that, like the hosting plan, everything can be seen here. So if everything is fine for you, like the program, like the runtime stack, everything is there. So you can go ahead and create this function. So it will do a couple of deployment processes. So let me maybe show that as well. So it will take some time to deploy. You can see it over here. Right. Let me maybe go to the. Yeah, so you get this pop-up here to show the deployment process. The one thing is remaining here. Execute it. All right, so what is happening now? Okay, it's almost done. While this is happening, let's take a look back at what we discussed earlier. So we looked at here. So we are laying the groundwork for us to get started with our coding process. So we have to now head over to the discord.dev. So still the deployment is in process. So Discord dev is this particular link. So what this means is this is for developers that can use the Discord application. So within the Discord application, you can create different sub applications. Like within the Discord application, you can create another applications using Discord bots and other sorts of options that they provide. So in this particular tutorial, what we are interested about is the Discord bot. So what you can do is you can click on this new application. So here you can provide application name. So let me maybe provide test application. Maybe analytics or something like that, just to show this. Let me see. Okay, it works. Right. So once you create that application, you can see the application selected over here, the name you used here, and you can see the general information here. So what we are interested about is actually the bot. So let's head over to that particular section here. And what you need to do is now, since our bot needs to listen to the messages sent on a channel, because that's where we will put our slash commands, and all the input to our application will be based on those slash commands, which is received by the bot. So like the bot needs to read messages. So what you need to do is under this privilege gateway intents, you can enable this message content intent. So once that's done, you can just save changes over here. And then after that is done, you will get this message. And let's go over to the OAuth 2. So here you can provide the different permissions that your bot needs. So first, what you need to do is click on this bot here. So there are other types of things that you can do here, but yeah, we're going to deal with the bot. For your bot, you can enable different options basically, or different permissions rather. So if you want your bot to have like administrator level permissions, you can just click on this and it will basically give everything. But if that is not the case, like if you don't want to do that, you can click on the granular level permissions that you need. So basically, we want our bot to send messages, maybe send messages in threads, read message history, use slash commands. Then you need to be able to weave the channels. Let me see whether we need anything else. I think that should be good. So once that is done, like you have selected the necessary permissions, if you go down, there will be under this generator URL, a particular URL created. So what you can do is you can just copy this URL and open up a tab and just go for that URL. What this will do is you'll need to be first logged into Discord, the Discord website, like the either the application using your Gmail account or whatever the account that is. And this will basically give you a pop-up saying whether you want to add this bot to a particular server that you have created. So, correct. Right. So if you click copy that developer like that URL over here and paste it in a new tab, you will get something like this. So I'm already logged into my application through the Discord application, like the desktop application, but it will show the pop-up in your browser. So you will, if you are logged in the desktop application as well, this pop-up will come there, but it can be either the browser or the application or even both. So in here, it's the, what you call the browser. So yeah, so here you will get to choose which server you want to add. So the one that I currently created was the demo analytics one. So here you can see all the permissions that you added earlier. The ones that were selected here will be shown to whoever the user who is trying to add this particular bot. Yeah, so you can go ahead and click on authorize if you want to add it. So I'm not going to do it at this point because I have already added a bot. Yeah, I will close this off. And yeah, so after you have done that, you should get your basically your bot should be shown in the particular server that you have created, but as offline. So it's not going to be online. Let me maybe show you that as well. Right. So if you click on the desktop application and go to the particular server that you created, you will see on this side under the offline section, the bot name or the bot that you created, and it will have this app tag to indicate that it is a bot application. So it will be under the offline section. So in mine, it's online because I have already deployed this particular bot using the Azure functions, but in your case, it will be offline. Yeah, that's that. Let me get back to here. So I think pretty much what we discussed was we discussed the sheets, we created the Azure function subscription and also the function app. So let's see whether it's deployed. Yeah, now the deployment is completed. So once that is done, if you go again to the functions app, you will see the function that you just created. So here, this is the one. So yeah, it got this demo Discord subscription. Yeah, so I'm not gonna use that. I will basically delete that because I have already created one. So let me just go ahead and delete this. All right, so while that happens, let's move on. So we have actually laid the groundwork over here. Let me open up the image that we used earlier. Right. So here we created the bot application through discord.dev. And now actually we can get into the coding part. Right. So let me just open up VS Code. So the first thing, let me get a new window here, just a blank window. So the first thing that you have to keep in mind is when working with the Azure functions, there are some prerequisites that you need to have in your system. One is the actual, like if you are going to test your Azure function locally, then you will need to have Azure function core tools. So that's like a .exe file that you need to install to your application so that you can run terminal commands using the Azure function core tool. So that will only be needed if you're going to test your function locally. which I did use. So in order to test things out before deploying, I actually used Azure Function Core Tools. So if you're interested in doing that, then you will need that. Apart from that, you will need some extensions as well to support the work that you will do, like the deployment work that you will do with the Azure services. So there are, I think, about 2 or 3 extensions that you have to install. So I'm not going to dive into those extensions at the moment. You can refer some other tutorials, like basically there are other content related to just installing those extensions. So if I just maybe give you, yeah, basically these 3 ones are needed for your Azure deployment. So if you are having any trouble installing them, you could refer some tutorial, like some videos out there. There are plenty of content out there related to this setting up of Azure extensions. So once you have done those successfully, you will get this type of a icon in your VS Code. So once again, I forgot to mention, so I'm doing the developing on VS Code. If you are a person that is doing your work in another editor like PyCharm, I'm not fully sure how the things would work out for it. So you might need to do some digging around your favorite editor if it is not VS Code, because Azure, being a Microsoft product, it does support the VS Code. So even in the documentations, they refer to VS Code. So I would encourage you to use a VS Code if you're flexible enough to move for it. But otherwise, yeah, as I said, you will have to do some digging. Yeah, that being said, if everything is done properly, you will see this icon. So now what I have created is actually, like, opened is actually a blank window. So whenever you want to get started with a Azure function project, what you need to do is, so you initially you will get to, like, when you haven't set it up, like set up as in you have to set up your Azure account, like basically connect the local your machine with the remote account. So in order to do that, you will get some initial pop-ups when you kind of initially set up this extension. So from there, you can actually select your subscription. So I have already selected mine, which is the demo Discord bot subscription. So I can see other subscription as well. But I will only select this one for the time being because that's what I want. And you can see all the different services that is available under this particular subscription. And I am interested about the function now, which is Azure Functions. So here also I can see that particular function app that I created remotely. Also, you could create the function like what we did on the UI side. You can do it through the terminal as well. And that's using the Azure CLI. So yeah, if you are a person who prefers to do things from the terminal, you can go down that path. But I prefer the visual aspects of the Azure portal. Right. So that being said, let me maybe show you how to create the boilerplate code for the functions project. So if you go here, you can see create function. Like if you haven't got a function project already, then it will show you this option. So what you can do is then, in order to kind of create a function, then you can just right. Let me just maybe create a folder just to show this. So illustration. Let me open that up. So here you will get to choose what type of language that you will use, and also the 2 types of programming models relevant to Python offered by Azure. So they are offering, something called Model V1 and Model V2. Model V1 is the old version of the Python programming model that they offer, but Model V2 is the latest one. So that's why it's recommended. If you want to learn more about why there are 2 models and what differences are there, you can dive into the documentation of Azure and kind of see for yourself what is different. Right, so let's move on. So it asks the relevant Python version that you want to use. So here you will get different types of triggers that can be used with your Azure functions. So now, just for example, the HTTP trigger is something or a type of a trigger that you can use if you are dealing with something related to web traffic. So if you want to listen to certain events on the web and do some processes related to those, then HTTP trigger will be the option to go. But let's say you want to do something on a timely manner, then you can go with the timer trigger over here. So it's something like that. And there are other sorts of triggers that you can use for different use cases. But for the project that we are discussing at the moment, what I will use is the HTTP trigger. So here you will get to name your function. So yeah, so you can like it gives a default name like this because it's a HTTP trigger, but you can customize as you need. So let's say HTTP test, sorry, this code here. And after you do that, you will get to define the several different levels of authorization needed by this Azure function. So if you want to build something secure, then you'll need to maybe use something like function or admin. But for this tutorial, I'll use anonymous because I don't want to deal with authentication at this point. Right, so it says opening front window, do that. So it will, show some steps here as to creating a virtual environment and all of that. Let's give it a minute. Okay. So yeah, we have our boilerplate code. So it will create a virtual environment for you, and also these other files that will be the template code that is given to you. So if we kind of take a look at this particular function app.py, that's where all the magic will happen. So here you can see as the root HTTP test this code. That's the name that you gave when you created the function project locally. So so all the basically the web URL that you will get for your API will end, like basically all the events that is listened will be through some sort of a URL / HTTP test Discord. So that's where that's how the URL will be, but you will see in a bit how will that end up. So let me just walk you through what is really here, what is happening here. So here in this example, so if you deploy this example as is, then what you will get is based on what type, what the Azure function domain name is. So for example, when I say the domain name, what I mean is something like this. Right. So the default domain is this is the one. So this is how your application will, like the URL will look like the initial part. So it will be something like this bit / then the / API / the name, the part that you see here, the string part here. So that's the URL. So different requests will be posted on that particular URL, and that will trigger the HTTP function or the Azure function. So for that particular URL, if you try to use a parameter called name, and provide a variable for it. So when you provide a parameter like with a URL, it will be something like, let me maybe just show you here. So it will be the web URL will look like the API URL will look something like this. So that's bit. And the way in which you would provide parameters for it will be like your name. So let me just, so that's how you pass a parameter to the URL itself. So when you once you have done the deployment, and if you go to this particular link, what you will end up getting is this output. So for the name parameter, you will get whatever the name you passed, and it says this. So if you really want to see for yourself how this will get, you can basically deploy this particular function as is and see for yourself. So once you have created this template code, earlier, if you can remember, here it was shown as create function project, but now since already a function project is created, and the way in which it identifies that a function project is created is through this host.json function, the JSON file. So that's how it identifies whether the current directory has a Azure function or not. So since that is already done, it will detect that, and you just need to click on this deploy to Azure button, and then pick the particular function app that you want to deploy it to. So if you have multiple function apps created, then you have to select to which particular function app that you want to deploy to. So if you do that, then you'll get what I explained earlier. But yeah, that's not what I'm interested about in this particular project, so I'm not going to do that. But you can definitely search for other content like Azure function, Python script deployment. If you do that, if you kind of search on that, you can get content on these. So feel free to check those out, but I'm not going to dive into that bit here. Right. So that is the function.py app here. And let me maybe just show this part. So this will define the different, like the relevant configurations needed for the deployment process. So if you look over here, by default, the application insights will be kind of enabled. But if you when you created the when you created the function app through the Azure portal, if you disabled it, that is not reflected here because this is just a boilerplate code. So it has these default values. So yeah. But anyways, you can change any of these after deployment as well. So that's fine, because after deployment, as in when you deploy it for the first time, and if you think about adding some other configuration, you can always redeploy, which will override the current deployment. Right. So this local settings.json is actually needed if you are going to test this Azure function locally. Something like this, in order to use this local.settings file, you'll need to have the Azure function core tools installed already. Otherwise, it won't work. So that's why that's what I mentioned earlier. So again, I'm not going to dive into how to test the Azure function locally, because that's going to be a separate topic in its own right. But again, there are plenty of content to that demonstrates how to test Azure function locally. So I would encourage you to look through those content, and if you find anything difficult there, like within this, you can test things that way. So while I'm saying this, if you want to test things out locally without deploying, you can use a framework called ngrok, which what it does is when you're testing locally, your function will be deployed in your local host, and by default it goes to the port 7071. So what you can do is through ngrok, so that's ngrok. What it does is it tunnels your local host to a particular static domain that is offered by ngrok. So you can kind of go to ngrok web tunneling and kind of dive into that particular area. So that's usually how developers would test related to things related to web applications before deploying. So if you want to dive into that part, that's another interesting topic. But yeah, so just wanted to mention that for a viewer that is interested about that aspect. Yep. So here, this requirement txt basically, if you have dealt with virtual environments, then this is what mentions all the libraries that we want to install in our virtual environment. But if you're new to virtual environments, that's like a kind of a isolated environment. You can install different libraries so that you don't contaminate your main or the global environment, like the Python environment, for example. So that's what the virtual environment is for. Right. So while you're doing your project, like developing your project, you can add the different libraries that you will import up here. So you'll need to make sure that if it is not an inbuilt library, you'll need to include those. So that's a bit of a walkthrough of the template code. But what I will do right now is actually not kind of use these parts. So I will get rid of these. I have already actually developed my code. I'll walk you through that. So let me bring that up. So again, here, now this is actually just a nested folder structure. So our actual function app is inside this bit right here, like this code folder. So you can see all the content that you show earlier. So earlier, you can see it over here as well. So this is where we need to kind of do our code. So before we actually dive into this bit first, I need to explain something, or rather something related to the slash commands that is related to the Discord bot. So by default, there are certain slash commands that we can use. So for example, now this is the application that I already have deployed. Now these are /ban, /gif, those are inbuilt / commands. And these are the commands that I created. So like the ones that I created for this particular bot. So in order to do this first, like if you create your bot for the first time, these won't appear because Discord doesn't know anything about that. So what you need to do is you have to create, basically register those / commands. So here, this folder actually have the code relevant to it. So let me maybe open this part right here. So here, this YAML file. So this YAML is actually a configuration file that we can use for different type of stuff. But here, for registration of the commands, we will use this YAML. So basically, there are different ways you can define commands. And you can, like if you want to learn more about what type of different / commands that you want to use, or you can use, you can dive into the documentation. So it's nicely described in the Discord .dev documentation, and feel free to check these out. So what I'm really using is a plain / command without, that doesn't need any inputs. So that's why I have described here. So if you want to define a / command which has which kind of takes a user input, then some more configurations will be need to be added, like over here, to make that happen. So at the moment, I'm not going to do that. And these are the two commands that I will use. So one command is give analysis, which will give something like the output that is shown here, something like this, which is the summation of all the 3 columns that we have in our Google Sheet. But this visual analysis is something like this, the bar graph that you're seeing here, which is actually, again, the summation of the columns, but it is kind of visually shown. Right. So in order to register these, you have to create, like basically do a post request on this particular URL. So this is like the API offered, or the REST API offered by Discord in order to register or basically, basically register commands. So here you can see the commands option given here. So at the moment, I have actually hard coded my token and application, which is not a best practice. But since this is a demo application, that's fine if you want to get things done quickly. But otherwise, it's better to handle these through environment variables. Since we are dealing with the Azure functions, Azure functions offer environment variable section, which we will see later in this tutorial. And that's where you can upload. So you should never hard code these type of credentials in the code. Right, but here, yeah, I have done it just for these testing purposes. So what this does is you can, okay, let me just show you where you can get these. So once you have created your application, like the Discord bot application, let me just go over there. And right, so if you go over to, if you go over here, you can see the application ID. So this part is where you can paste this particular part. Like over here, you can paste that for the application ID. For the token, you can again go back to here, and let's go to the bot. So here you'll see the token. So it's not shown by default. So what you need to do is for the first time, you will need to reset this token, and you'll get this multi-factor authentication. So let me just do that. So here the token will be exposed at that point. So what you need to do is copy that and paste it before you forget that again. So here you can paste it. So I'm not going to do that as well. So right, so that's how you get these credentials over here. So this bit actually opens the Discord, like the YAML file that I have defined here, and it will kind of read it to this particular thing. And using the YAML library, you can actually load that content, and then we need to include that content through the YAML file in our post request. So since I have two commands, I have to do two post requests. So for each command, let me see. We have to pass the like the command, like those information as the body of the post request. So that's what this JSON means. And also for the headers, you need to provide the token of the bot so that it can identify that this particular bot needs to be registered with this command. So that's how it happens. Right. So that's pretty much what this code does. Let me maybe just show you how we can run this. So I need to kind of log into basically change my directory into the slash command. So this code slash. Right, so now I'm in that directory, then let's say Python register command. So my commands are already registered. Okay, I need to activate my virtual environment. So for my virtual environment purposes, I'm using Poetry, but that is not really a strict requirement. You can use whatever the virtual environment management library that you're using. So, but my preference is for Poetry, so I'm using that. And let's now, right. So if your codes are getting if your commands are getting successfully created, then you should see a status code of 200. So that's the success response code. If it didn't get created successfully, you will see something like 401, which is for non-authorized codes or some other error code. But what you should see, if everything happens fine, you should see 200. So make sure to keep that in mind. Right. So once you do that, you will, if you like for the first time, if you have run that command, you will then start to see the two commands that you created. So mine was already there earlier. But in your case, if you're doing it for the first time, you'll see those two. Right. So that's the part relevant to command registration. Let me just recall what else that I need to discuss. Right. Okay, that's actually the registration part. So let's get into the code again. Let me just close these off. So something that you need to do relevant to, like, again, if you can remember at the start of this video, what I told was you can interact with the Discord application through two ways. One is through the SDK and one is through the REST API. So I think I might have mentioned this to Google Sheets as well, but it same applies to the Discord. So even in Discord, you can use the Discord client uh, and the or the client SDK and the REST API. But here, since we are using Azure functions, what we need to use is actually the REST API. Or rather, what we need to do is, when I say REST API, we need to define something called the interactions endpoint. So if you use the SDK offered by Discord, then you will have to have a server that is up and running continuously, so it can't stop. But the idea behind Azure Functions is that we don't require to have a server being up and running all the time. So that's the idea behind serverless programming, right? So in order to do that, what we need to set up is some sort of event listener. So that's the webhook URL that I showed here. So this webhook, now there is some sort of a listener within the Azure function that listen to specific events given by Discord. So in order to do that, Discord needs to know where that particular listener is. So that's what this interaction endpoint is about. So here already an example is provided, but after you do this deployment process, what you will end up getting is something like this. So in my case, this was the URL that I had. So after your deployment also, you will get something like this. Right. So, and in my case, I already defined that part. Let me just show that. So set that. So here, right. So this part is what I talked about. So the moment that you add or like basically add a URL here and then save it, Discord will do something that needs some verification. So we can't just paste a URL here and be done with it. So Discord does some verification from its end, and we need to provide the corresponding response to that in order to make sure that this particular URL that we are adding here will be accepted by Discord. So you can learn more about that part if you go to this overview. If you go to this particular link, you can see overview of interactions. And if you scroll down a bit, you will see here under the interactions section, receiving and responding. So here, if you go down a bit further, so here, receiving an interaction, And here we can see different types of commands that we can use. Right, let me go to the bit. Okay, maybe not that part. Sorry, my bad. Yeah, here. Preparing for interaction. So this is actually what it says, like as I mentioned, in order to validate that particular URL that we are going to save there, save over here, it needs to do some verification. So basically, Discord will send ping requests, which is something like this, like a JSON payload, which has a parameter called type and a value of 1. So what we need to do is need to respond with, like, we need to detect this part, and we need to detect, like, send back a pong request with just a value 1 as well. So that's called ping and pong, but it's just a terminology being used here, nothing too complex. However, the complex part is this validating of security headers. So this is basically to authenticate, or rather to make sure that you and Discord are the only people interacting through this particular URL. So Discord wants to make sure, and even us, we as a user want to make sure that our information which is transmitted through these URLs are not leaked, or any user, any other particular hacker doesn't get access to the information that we are communicating between these two endpoints, basically the Discord and the Azure function. So in order to do that, there is something called security, like the signing being done for these URL headers, or rather you can say it as URL as well. And we need to verify, like, Discord will have a certain secret on their end, and we need to verify, like, we have this, just think of it as a a closed box, and both of us have the key, but none other than that, like any other person other than us doesn't have that key. So that particular key is actually the public key in your Discord application. So if you head over to here, the general information, you'll see something called public key. So Discord will from their end send like a anonymized some sort of a secret, and the way in which we can unlock that secret is through that public key. So what we need to do is we need to kind of reverse the process of anonymizing and see whether it matches with that particular secret that we have sent. So basically, it's like doing the same thing at both ends and seeing whether it matches. So that's what we need to do here. So in order to validate that security header, you need to have an additional process in your actual function before you do anything. So that's what actually this verify headers function do. So so this bit right here, so this, you can actually dive into the documentation and kind of understand what is really happening, and also you can search other content relevant to what really web, like the signing or the security type of aspects related to this, you can search and kind of learn for yourself. But yeah, basically this will do the job of verifying your headers. So this bit was a bit tricky at first, because this was something kind of new to me, but eventually once you kind of dive into that rabbit hole of these stuff, you will learn it along the way. So the Discord documentation, what it uses is this NACL library, which is, I think, I can't exactly remember what this NACL stands for, but it was something like cryptographic library or something like that. Yeah. This particular library was actually, the last update was somewhere in 2022. So I thought of maybe going ahead with something newer than this. which is the cryptography library that I've used here. So this actually does the same thing as what's shown in the documentation over here. So it's not, nothing is different. It's just that this bit over here is kind of expanded to like do over here. Right. So if you want to kind of get the explanation of this, you can simply uh, try with ChatGPT. So you can maybe copy this code and copy the code that I have given here and just asked it to explain the different parts of it. So it will be able to do that. Right. So that being said, that's the verification part. So here, this is the part where we does the ping and pong request verification, and this is where the uh, signature verification happens. Right. So that is actually happening at the beginning of our function here. So if we have a type 1 or the ping request, that means there will be likely a verification that needs to happen. So that's why that particular request is verified. And if everything works fine, if your verification works fine, then what you will see is like, let's say, let's go over here. So if I just kind of save the changes here again, I get the successful message here because there's nothing saved. But if you place this again, like paste your URL here, and if you try to save changes, what you should see is the green color message. Okay, that's weird. Let me give it a retry. So what you should not see is something like this. That means the verification failed. So let me retry. All right, so that time it was successful. So that means the verification happened successfully. So this is actually a deployed application. The earlier error message could be due to some sort of a glitch in the server that we have deployed. But yeah, it's all fine. Yeah, what you should see from your end is something like this. That means your verification happened successfully. One thing that I would like to mention at this point is, so when I was testing this function locally using ngrok, as I mentioned earlier, I like when I saved this, like the link for the first time, and when I tested it locally, like not the deployed one, but the local version, I got an error message saying like if you use ngrok, you will have a terminal which indicates different post requests that are received by this particular URL. So you will be able to see the different status codes of those, uh, basically the status codes of the responses that are sent towards those post requests. And there were some error message, like error codes, like 401 codes being shared across, and still the link actually got saved successfully. So that means I like even though error code is raised, this saving part happens fine, meaning that something actually discodes as expects from us. So it doesn't expect at that point, doesn't expect a success code, but an error code is what they expected. So I thought initially that I was doing something wrong, and I kind of had to spend a couple of days, or I think, as I can remember, weeks trying to solve that one out. But actually, it was something expected. So if you do kind of end up testing this locally and you might come across this situation, I just want to make sure that you know that that is expected. So as long as you get this successful message when you save the link, then you should be good. Right. So that's a small note that I wanted to mention. So let me get into the code again. All right. So since now the verification part is out of our way, let's get into the interesting bits, which is actually dealing with the sheet data that we have in our Google Sheet. Right. So first thing is to get the data. So let's maybe look at that. Um, so over here, what we need to do is actually do a GET request for the Google Sheets API. And the way in which we need to do that is defined in this part. So in order to do this GET request, we need several credentials. So which is the Sheet ID, Sheet API key, or the Google project API key, and the data range. So let me just walk you through how you can get those credentials. So if you go back to your Google Sheet, and if you kind of click over here, let me maybe just remove this bit. Right. So if you go like observe this link over here, starting from here and ending here will be your sheet ID. So basically that's your ID, and that is the one that you want to copy and paste it into your environment variable sections in the Azure portal, which I will show in a bit. But if you're testing things locally, what you could do is maybe go up top and kind of hard code it here. So currently I have those variables hard coded and commented out because when I tested things out locally, I used this way to code, like basically include the credentials. But again, I just want to emphasize that this is not something you want to do if you are dealing with something like some sensitive data in your Google Sheet data. It can be sensitive, so you don't want to hard code this in your code. In any case, if someone accesses this code, they'll have the access to these credentials as well. But yeah, since I'm testing things out, I'm going to include those here. If I am testing it out locally, that is. But I've already deployed it, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so while we are at it, maybe it's better to show the environment variable section. So if you go to your functions app, what you will get is something like this. So you can see all the relevant resource groups and other attributes relevant to your functions app. And if you head over to the settings section, and you can see an environment variable section. So here you can see all the different variables that you have defined as environment variables. So in this particular case, I have already added the relevant variables that I need. So this is like the sheet ID and sheet API key, and also the data range. So the way in which you would add a environment variable is pretty straightforward. So you just give a name for it and the particular value, and you just apply. So that will show up here, and then again you have to click on apply in order to make sure those changes are saved to the Azure function. So when you click on the second apply here, your functions app will restart, so which you can identify when you are adding this variables. So let me get back to the code. Right. So here, yeah, the sheet ID is that. And the API key is actually the project key that you will get here. So as we kind of dived into earlier, we created this API key and just get the value of it from here and have it included in our environment variables. And for the data range that you need to define, so there is a specific way that Google Sheets API expects this data range to be. So you can get that actually by heading over to your sheet. If you kind of highlight these three columns, and let's assume that these three columns are the ones that have your data. So it will be indicated like this, which is A to C or A:C. But that's not really how you want to include your data range in that API, like the URL. So if you want to do that, what you can do is something like this. You can press on equal. Like it's again pretty straightforward. So if you want to do the first three columns, it will be something like this. So the first part will be the tab name, which is sheet one over here, and you do a exclamation mark, then the particular column range. So that's how you will define the data range. And you can maybe copy this bit, depending on your sheet, you can copy the particular relevant part and have it included as your environment variable as the data range. So the reason why, so data range is actually not a credential, but rather something relevant to your data. So you can actually go ahead and hard code that over here as well. That's fine. But in case you do some changes to that data range, then you will have to go back to the code and do that, do a code change and redeploy, which is, I think, for a change like that is troublesome. So that's why I included that also as an environment variable so that I don't want to deal with that trouble at a later point. So, but yeah, it's up to your preference. I think this doesn't hurt, so it's better to include it this way. Yeah, once those are done, basically you have everything you need to do the GET request. So as parameters, you will need to pass in the Sheet API key. And this is all again defined in the properly explained in the documentation of the Google Sheets API. So feel free to check those out. But yeah, once that is done, you will get the sheet data. And also make sure, I just want to remind again that you need to have your sheet, the access level of your sheet to be anyone with the link, not restricted. So if you have a restricted one, then you will have to deal with the trouble of authorization further. So yeah, you need to have the access level as anyone with the link. So once all of that is done, you can create the data frame like this, and I will return the pandas data frame from this function, which will be retrieved here. So depending on what slash command, like the the bot slash command that we input from the Discord end, we can define what the process needs to be done. So for this simple, the simple demonstration, what I will do is two commands, one for the string output and other for the visual output. So give analysis command will be the string output. So I will define my string analysis function like this. So it will just take the summation of each column and add it to a string. And it will get the result as I showed earlier, which is something like this. All right, so, and the next part, so once you get that output, your response request needs to be in a certain format, which is expected by the Discord API. So again, if you want to dive into why I have defined this bit right here in this way, you can dive into the documentation of the interactions that is offered by Discord. So feel free to check that out if that's something interesting to you or you want to understand better. Right. So that's the string part. For the visual part, you need to do something different. So since you are not only dealing with strings, since you're dealing with image data, there will be something basically something apart from string data types that is shared across the interactions endpoint. So you have to actually communicate. If you're sharing an image, you need to communicate binary data. So this is what that basically how that looks like. And this actually needs a separate channel webhook from the channel that you have created. So earlier, if I just go back here, this response is towards the Discord, like a general API, whereas the image response that we want to send will be to a separate URL apart from the web, like the general Discord API. So the way in which you can take the webhook for a particular channel that you have created. In my case, it's just a general channel that you will get along with the server that you create. So if you go to the settings, let me just show that again. If you go to the settings over here and head over to the integrations section, you will get something called the webhooks. So here you can create another, like a new webhook. Like if you don't have a webhook already, you can just click on the new webhook and it will create one for you. So it will have this particular name and it will have the channel assigned to it. And then you can copy that webhook. So I'm not gonna do that. Let me just delete that. So I have already created one and I'm gonna copy that webhook URL and include it in an environment variable again called channel webhook that you might have seen in the Azure environment variables that I showed just a while ago. Right. So here, this code bit, I actually generated it through some research that I did through Stack Overflow as well as ChatGPT. So here, what this is called is actually multi-part form data post request. So that's something you can dive into if it is interesting for you. So there is a particular form of post request, which is the multi-part form. And this is the way in which you should convey the binary data that you want to share across. So in this case, I'm sharing an image and I don't want to save it into a local, or rather, I don't want to save it into a directory and then retrieve it back and send it. So that's why I'm doing this visual, like in the visual analysis function. If you go there, I'm creating the bar plot using the matplotlib library in Python. It's included up top. I'm creating this particular, what you call the binary data without saving the image in our local directory or the local directory of the particular compute that is being used in this in the cloud. So again, I got this bit from ChatGPT just by asking, like basically prompting it to tell me how I can get the image data without saving it to the local directory as a PNG or JPG image file. So this is what it returned, and it actually did work correctly. And the way in which, how I got to know about the multi-part form data post request was through Stack Overflow. You can kind of search in this direction. So I had to kind of go like dive into again a rabbit hole to figure out how to transmit an image or rather image data through these URLs. And this is what I kind of found from my research. But if this is something that you want to kind of understand deeply, then you can feel free to dive in on this part and kind of understanding it better. All right, so in this way, you will make a separate response request. And you also want to make sure that you return another response to the general Discord API as well. Otherwise, you will get something like application. Like if you give that particular Discord command and you don't give a response, it will like for your visual analysis command, when you press enter, if you don't give that response, it will say something like application didn't respond. So you don't want to see those error messages every time you send it. So that's why I have returned another response, like visual will be returned shortly. And yeah, I'm again returning this according to the structure that the Discord API expects. Yeah, so that's a bit about how the code is. So once everything is done as I explained over here, what you can do is go ahead, go to this Azure extension or the option here, and then click on deploy to Azure. So if you have something like a nested structure, like a folder structure that I have, you might want to make sure that your URL, like not the URL, sorry, the folder path shown here should be reflected according to the folder that you have, like the function app code. So make sure you check that first before deploying. Otherwise, you will be deploying some other folder which you don't want to do. So since I have already done this, let me just make sure now I have already deployed my code. So I'll just run this part again just to see whether it works fine. Okay, again, might be a glitch. Right. I got the output as that. And let me try the visual output as well. I just want to show that it's working. Yep. So this is the output that I have defined here, like this response. So image, I think the image data, it takes some time to travel. So that's why it's shown after this. So, but I do the post request before that particular response, but I received it after. So yeah, that's about that. So let me show you again how to deploy this. So if you have done everything correctly, you can just click on this deploy icon. And now it will give you a prompt up here to select the particular functions app that you have created in your remote Azure portal. So here you can click on this. Then what it will do is it will start on the, it will give you this prompt saying that everything that is already there will be overwritten, and you can kind of basically it will overwrite everything from what you have right now. So you can just click on deploy, and in your terminal, in the Azure section, you can see that the steps of deploying. So it will zip the package and do the deployment process. So it will take a bit of time. Just let's give it a minute. All right, so the deployment is done. Let's click on this view output. So it has all the steps that were done in order to do the deployment process. And as a final note, it will give you the end URL. So here, this is the URL that I have actually pasted on my interactions endpoint in the Discord application. So if I just go again over here, this is the same application. Also the same link. And now to see again the final results, let me just try this command again after deploying to see if it works. All right, it does. And the visual analysis as well. All right, so it works fine. So that means our project is successful. So on a final note, if you want to get rid of this API part, what you can do is actually do some modification to this host JSON. So here, after this part, you can actually add something like, let me just get that bit. So there is something called the root prefix. So let me just get that bit. Hold on a second. So you can include actually this bit right here. So this will actually get rid of that API part in your URL if that is something inconvenient for you. But yeah, if it is not, you can just leave it as it is, as it was by default or the template code. So that actually summarizes the project. So Hope you got to know something out of this, and feel free to leave any comments if you come across any problems. I'll try to answer them. Yeah, that's it.